So that's an overview. So we just looked at cost of goods sold. There's some other systems in here that we want to look at, and those are labor systems. That's the other half of the big part of the equation as we kind of go
Prime
through
cost.
that. Yep. The other half of prime cost is labor. So as we look to labor, we start to see how our purchasing systems tied to those budgets. So and for cost of goods sold, we didn't really show that, but here we're looking at now. Here's Visconti's. When I go here, I have this right away. I have this schedule variance report, right? And so if we start to follow this through the natural progression here, let's see, next week is the 8th, right? So you'll see here that they actually have a budget where they have actually scheduled items, and then they have a budget that's for that. And you can see they're well under budget for that week. Could be that they're probably having a surge in business, which I know they're up in the north, and so they're having a surge in business.
So increase in income.
Exactly. So they need to adjust their targets, probably. Yeah. So when they're looking at this, well, that all ties back to budget and getting things in here, right? So what happens is they do a labor allotment here, right? And so let's see if So now when we go and look at labor, what we want to see is that we're starting from big picture goals, and we want to break them down into small bite-sized pieces that our management team can execute on, right? So we're going back to the beginning where we were talking about budgets and setting goals. And so there's a couple things I want to check out here. So you can see here I have a budget here that's 424 to 521. So this is Solu, this is Peter Sclafani. He has targets that are periodic. So he runs a period accounting system, and so he has the budget. It can adjust to be period. Before we looked at it, it was monthly. So one of Peter's periods here is 424 to 521. So immediately what I can do is look at my daily paperwork, go into my sales forecast, and when we look at that, it was 424. He runs a Wednesday to Tuesday work week to 521, right? So we see that, and you see he's got 407,395.51 was his sales forecast. You can see that we've predicted his mix. You can see that, remember we talked about mix at the beginning, that applies all the way through. Now when I look at the budget, you'll see that budget sales forecast matches what the system is saying. So not only have we done a sales forecast by month, but we have it broken down by day as well, which ties into our scheduling and our purchasing and all that too, and adjusts based on actuals too. So we don't want to get in too deep on how it does that. That's part of our 60-day training. So that's in there. So, but you can see that matches. So when I look at the budget, there's some clear labor goals that have to happen here. So you can see here he's got management salaries in here, and then he's got some labor by department here, and see how it's specialized is a little bit different than the one I showed you earlier.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different, but overall you can see here we've labeled this labor allotment target, and you'll see that it's 26.69%. Okay. So now what management can do is they go to this labor allotment system. Okay. Now you can see here they have a budget for 5.8. Okay. I'm going to pretend that I'm going budget for 5.8. So I go and add a labor allotment. Right. And we wanted this to be easy and to have good flow through and easy to understand. So I just follow the steps here. You are completing the labor allotment for what schedule? Well, I'm doing a schedule in the future. So they won't do another one till tomorrow, which will be for the week of the 15th. Right. So when the 8th hits, they'll do forward to the 15th. But on the 1st of May, they said, hey, let's budget for the 8th of May into the future. Right. So what they would do is they'd go, oh, okay, I'm going to write a schedule for May 8th. Okay. And I have this in here. And so on May 1st, the most current complete week they had was from 424 to 430. And so the system will tell you that or remind you of that. The most current complete week was the week previous. And what they do is they can pull, I think Peter's Toast. So we just hit a button and we pull all that data from Toast, and it populates these numbers here. Okay. So it tells me what I actually did. They're punching in on Toast. All these are mapped out. We have all that data, and it tells him what his actual labor is. Then we go to budget. And we have to, maybe we have the managers are in the budget, maybe they're not, but now I don't have to remember that. I just go to that budget and I can go, okay, the period that I'm in is 424 to 521, and you can see how it says 26.69. I click that button, and now I've got a budget target of 26.69. It will account for all my salaries, and what this does, without getting too deep into it, is instead of like looking at all these big complicated percentages, it just says, hey, here's how many hours you can schedule in each department. So once we have all that in there, I just hit calculate on it, and it will tell me how many bartender hours I can schedule to make that budget that I wrote a reality.
Yeah. So you're literally giving a budget of hours, not a budget of
percentages. Yeah. And it's much easier for them to go and do that.
Like, yeah, you start scheduling people out and you're seeing that number go lower and lower and lower. And now you're thinking to yourself, okay, well now,
right,
this is what I have to work
exactly
with. Yeah.
So the 8th is tomorrow, so we go into the future, and this is the big difference of Restaurant Systems Pros. We actively try to control tomorrow. If I waste money on labor, the clock ticks, that money's gone. I can't go, hey, I overused a few hours last week, employee, can I get those back this week?
Right.
But if I order too many cans of tomato paste, I can use them tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if now when I go to this schedule variance here, and I'm going to open up another tab here. I'm getting better at this already.
Using the mouse pad?
Yeah. So now I go look at next week. Now, here is if you remember I had budgeted 221 bartender hours.
Yeah.
They actually scheduled 209. So now they write their schedules in the system, and it says, and it compares what they actually scheduled to what their budget is.
So they came in 11 points or 11 hours
under budget.
Nice.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And they're going to have incentive to do this, because if they're doing profit sharing or anything like that, open book management, they're like, well, do we really need to use the entire budget, or can we see if we can get by with less,
right? And be efficient without sacrificing and this is where in our bonus system we tie in like reviews and quality of service. We don't want to take away from our service, but a lot of times the efficiencies are there and we just can't see them sometimes.
I mean, I just had John Kearns on the show, and he was talking about just the power of just staggering workforce. Like, hey, like let's look at the data. Yeah. When if we are a breakfast restaurant, do we need to have all hands on deck at 7 a.m. or can we schedule 2 servers? And then by 8:30, typically the sales reports, the data shows that this is when people start coming in. We'll schedule a third person, and then 15 minutes later we'll have another person come in, where you can literally have people showing up at the quarter hour based off of the past, just to really.
Exactly. And so what we do is we take it a step further. What we teach is we always want to have qualitative skills. And what you just described there is your qualitative skills to make good decisions for the business, right? It's your gut feeling of what is efficient and all that too. Well, we also want quantitative skills. And quantitative is, what do the numbers say, right? Yeah. And so what we do is we help. If you're doing only qualitative, you're going to be going down the wrong path. Only gut feelings going to take you down the wrong path. If you're doing only the numbers, it's going to take you down the wrong path. If you take your qualitative and quantitative and put it together to make good decisions, that's where you're hitting a sweet spot.
Yeah, I feel like Nick Cirillo calls this trust and track. Okay. You got to trust. That's the qualitative, right? Yeah. You got to trust your gut. You got to trust the people. Yeah. But you have to track it on the back end. You can't just trust without tracking.
You got to know these things too. Like, oh, I can't send this server home because this server's green, and if the restaurant gets packed, they won't be able to handle it. Or this cook isn't cross-trained yet, so
no two servers are exactly the same.
So you got to tie that all in. It's
maybe
not just
at
numbers.
7 a.m. have your stronger servers on in case you get an earlier rush. They can handle it. Whereas if you have a greenhorn on, they're gonna be buried in the cold.
Or you run the numbers and it's the opposite. You say, "Oh my gosh, we're really over efficient. We need to add more people." Right, that happens as well with our systems too, because like here, we're not going to get into it here, but we have dollars per labor hour, which lets us track efficiencies. And this is giving me an overview by week, like a big we went to month, now we're looking at week, and then we'll go and look at it by the day too. And so we have some proprietary stuff that's called like the reverse labor system that not only tells you let me go take a look at it here. So if we go to reverse labor system, that all ties into this, right? So if I'm going to, what my overall target is for, let's say I'm even looking at the first here, right? So you'll see here that Peter has all days finished here except for Tuesday, which is the end of his work week, the way that he runs the system. Well, Tuesday, this is today. Of course, it's not in there, right? If I look at just Tuesday on this is going to tell me my necessary sales. So you can see here that he is trying to run a 19.67. That's from budget. So remember we put a 26.69 into the system. Well, it took the salaries off the top of that. And what's left over is for my variable labor.
Got it.
So after the salaries have been reviewed, because nobody can control that, they're a fixed number, right? So that's it comes right off the top. Now, what this does, and this is in our apps too, so managers can access it at their fingertips, is they go, okay, my necessary sales for today are 9,212. Now, what happens is in the middle of the day today, I don't know what time it is. It's in the afternoon, so maybe lunch service is finished, but most of the sales are going to happen tonight. It's for me, I may be running a 50% labor right now.
But by the end of the day, when all the new cash is in, it's going to be different.
Exactly. And even at 7 o'clock, I might be running 10% labor.
Right.
But I still have to finish cleaning up and do ordering and all that stuff that happens to close out at the end of the night. And so what happens is you go and look at your POS system, and I might have a 19.67% target, but at no point during the day at all am I ever going to be like at 19.67. I'm going to be really high
end of the day.
Until the end of the day. And so what we do is we flip that over on its head and we say, okay, if I'm going to be on budget, I need to do 9,212.60 in sales for me to be in budget.
So now you have a goal.
Now I have a goal of hitting 9,200 in sales. And if I do that, I'll pay for my labor.
Got it.
Right. And I could change it. Like if I go into the, let's say I go to the line cooks here, I could even create, you could edit this in your app as well for the managers. But like, let's say I have and they'll overwrite this, so it's actually fine that I change it. But Arthur Robinson here, right? Or let me see, Andrew. Let's say Andrew, we got our printers going off for our POS system in the background. That's exciting, sweet noise to me. But let's say that Andrew right here was working till 1 o'clock, right? So my manager can create a plan. You can see earlier in the week, those are all the real punch times. But if I go, hey, 9 a.m. to like 1, let's say that, for whatever reason, we say, hey, who wants to go home? And then, Andre does go home. Right. And so we make it to where we can type it in, and he goes home 2 hours early. So remember it was 9,200 and something, right? So I hit save in there. I just planned to cut him. Now it's $9,039 I need to do because we just made a cut there too. It also shows me that I've edited that. It's white for accountability that's edited. What will happen too, like if I look at yesterday, so I go to yesterday on this, you'll see how it's all dark blue there. That's actually the real punch times have come in from the POS system. And then it will tell me what, like yesterday, based on what was actually worked in the POS system, it shows him that he's got 70, that he needed to do 7,500. His forecast was 7,600, but he did 73. So he was really close. He ran a 19.93 for yesterday, which is a really good Monday, right?
Yeah.
So, and those are the actual numbers here. You can see originally scheduled was 175 hours and actually worked was 149. So that's a gold star for my management team right there.
Yeah.
They actually used less hours than were needed, and they did about what they started to hone in on that. At the beginning of the day, the necessary sales would have been much higher based on the 175 hours that were scheduled too. We also have this part right here where you can easily look at that. So sometimes you're like, where did I do good? Where did I do bad? If I'm looking at this week and I want to look at that Monday, I'm looking at bartenders here. It shows me like this person right here was scheduled 4 to 10. Well, they actually worked 4:06 to 10:52. So they went over their hours a little bit there. So you can kind of go through the whole shift and see like, where did I do good? Where did I do bad? And look back on that to see if you had a problem or if you want to repeat some good things that you did on there.
I love it.
Sometimes you find that, you put a plan out, but then managers don't execute the plan. And what's the good of doing a plan if we're not executing the plan, right? So we kind of lay out a plan, but we all know the restaurant business. We got to bob and weave and make it work. And so we want to just keep people accountable to the plan. And, if I question a manager on it, it's not like accusatory. It's like, hey, let's talk about why this person worked 3 extra hours.
Let's talk about the numbers, not your actions.
Yeah, exactly, too. And it's very black and white and not confrontational or anything like that.
This is what we said. This is where we are. Let's find a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it gives really good transparency to all of it and all the details. It's really tough to go back and look this stuff up and find it. Like all the information's in your POS system, but how can we slice and dice it to where it's useful to make good decisions on and have a good dashboard for how we're operating?
Yeah, got it. Are we done looking at scheduled versus actual?
Yes.
In labor systems?
Yes. Eric, let me show you schedules. And this is where, when we built our scheduling system, it wasn't really to compete with Hot Schedules or Schedule Fly or 7 Shifts or any of those other ones out there. They're good in their own right, but we're creating our schedules from the big picture financials that we created. And so having the schedules on our system is a must for an owner to be able to judge and see if they're on track from the plan that they created. So it was a necessary thing to build. We built it in about 2015. And with that, we know that you need the convenience of your employees to be able to swap schedules on the app and to be able to request time off. And you see here, you can see that there's a pending request here. That manager has to do it. That's pending. This one's been approved. That one's pending. So and this is for, as you go through the week, where they're at with it. So managers will go and approve them. It's all easy. Like if they're swapping schedules, it'll ask the person they're swapping with before it asks the manager. We don't want to approve it. And then they're not willing to work for you and things like that. Yeah. There's also training systems and things which I can probably show you, coming up next. But the scheduling system is all in there as well. And it's necessary to be tied because all of this is tied to the financials.
Explain to me this rating.
So that is just for managers. Looks like they're not really using it. Someone gave Lauren a 1 star there on that. So if Lauren, you're watching this, I apologize on there.
So basically this is a way to say like the managers saying like this person is.
So let's say you had to write the schedule.
Yeah.
It would be really helpful if everybody had a rating in there. Yeah. Because then you could make sure that Friday night isn't full of 1-star servers.
Got it.
Right? I got to have some 5-star people on my busy nights. They're working with my 3 stars in there. If I'm below 3 stars, I probably need some training to do on that. And, we can get in there and do it. Only managers see that. Employees don't see their rating on there. That's for the manager to have some breadcrumbs to where I can write a schedule if I know nothing about those employees, right? That's what systems can do for you, right? And it helps a new manager, helps us train new people and get people in the systems more there. So that's just one of those breadcrumbs in there too. Availability's in there where they can, have their availability in there and the managers can see all that and they can do it. If you have multiple restaurants, you can see if they're scheduled in another store and not schedule them in 2 stores at once on accident, things like that. If they're multiple positions, it won't let you schedule them in multiple positions at the same time as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Good question.
Is that all things labor?
That's all things labor. Yeah.